Welcome to ClickFunnels Radio, the podcast that brings you the latest strategies, insights, and success stories from online marketers just like you who utilize funnels to grow their business. Our mission is simple: to help you unleash the true potential of your online business by harnessing the power of funnels. Join us every week as we bring you exclusive interviews and thought-provoking discussions that will revolutionize the way you approach online marketing. Here are your hosts, Laura Demetrius and Chris Cameron.
Welcome back out to ClickFunnels Radio. As always, my name is Chris Cameron, and here with me is my co-host, Laura Demetrius. Laura, look, you've got some sun in your eyes. What's going on over there in your office?
It is super bright and sunny here in West Michigan, which is a rarity. So I will take it while it's actually warm and summery, because tomorrow it's probably going to snow, but things are good.
Well, that is awesome. I am so excited for our guest today, and I'm going to do a little bit of intro. I want to introduce Marisa Murgatroyd. She started her career as an artist who was told by her father that she had no marketable skills, but she figured out how to build a multi-million-dollar business. Anyway, and she has had over 12,500 students. She's taught them how to succeed online, many of whom also felt like they had no marketable skills. But she sold over $40 million of online courses and had student success rates of 10 to 30 times higher than the industry standard, has been ranked on the Inc. list. I mean, you name it. Marisa is an absolute rock star who helps people online with a number of different things. So welcome out to the podcast, Marisa. Excited to have you.
Thank you so much. I'm super stoked to be here. And I know that so many people in the ClickFunnels audience are building funnels. And one of the easiest ways and, fastest ways to get a funnel going is around a digital product. And so many people that were trying to build funnels around digital products. So how do you actually get one to work, and what's most important to feature in your online course or group coaching program or digital product? And I know there's a lot to share in that domain. So I'm stoked to be here.
I think you're right. I think so many people, it's funny that you say there's no marketable skills. Like, people think that they have to have a specific product, they have to have a brick and mortar store, or they have to have a service. But it's funny, we often refer to these people as experts. It can be a number of different things. Do you have some examples of people that are not necessarily, brick and mortar or e-com? Like, what are some of these other skills that people can coach or create courses on?
Oh my gosh. Well, I've got this online course creators mega niche checklist where there's something like 20 different mega niches. By the mega niche, I mean the big bucket category. Anything from like arts, hobbies, and sports, to personal development, to professional development and career, to financial kind of expertise, parenting, love, sex, and relationships. I mean, it's a pretty big gamut there in terms of where people are creating successful courses. I've had people do big life-changing courses on, topics such as, health and overcoming serious illnesses, to courses about things like making macaroons and playing the guitar. So there's such a huge range in terms of what people want to learn how to do. And that's what I think is so exciting. And I think people have a really big misconception as to what an online course is. And I actually think the definition of courses is changing since there's this giant flood of AI generated content. Because a lot of people think courses is about, conveying or imparting knowledge or expertise or information. But the truth is that people don't pay for that because they can get that for free on the internet pretty much with a few, clicks of the keyboard. What they're paying for is some kind of result or transformation, meaning what can your course help someone do or be or feel or overcome or achieve? So it's not about, all the information that you share with people. And that's a really old school approach to courses and education. But how do you facilitate and accelerate a particular result or outcome? And I think that also takes some of the pressure off needing to be an expert, because there are experts who can't show other people how to do what they did. And then there are people with much less knowledge and expertise, but who can actually help someone guide them to a result, right?
That's so funny that you say that.
That's a good point. When you talk about not having your father saying you don't have marketable skills, like that is marketing, right? It's not just about the knowledge. It's how you convey that knowledge and how you offer the solution or the results or the lifestyle that people are looking for. Like that is marketing. So if somebody were to come to you and they learn about what you're doing and they were like, I don't feel like I'm very marketable and I don't even really know what I like. I have some hobbies. There's some things I'm interested in, but like, I don't really know what I could offer somebody. How do you help them find that?
Well, first of all, the question that's being asked is the wrong question, because the question is all about you and what you're good at and what you know about. But the real question to ask is, what can I help someone do or be or feel? It doesn't even have to be about doing, because I have a lot of people who teach courses in personal development and spirituality. I mean, is Joe Dispenza, who's one of the biggest kind of program creators right now, having people do something? No, they're having people be in a different way. And so there's so many different things. It's not about, and I think that's where people get caught up, because they think the course is an extension of them. And while you are a facilitator or a course creator, it's the real question to ask is, can I help someone do something simpler, easier, faster, more enjoyably? Or even, can I help people show up differently in their lives? Can I help them get a better result? And I think that's the question to ask. And when you shift from you to the market and what the market is asking for, even what people are naturally coming to you for, I sometimes say that you don't necessarily find your niche. Sometimes your niche finds you. And if you listen closely, I'm willing to bet over the course of your life that people tend to come to you for something specific or ask you about specific things, because you naturally project knowingness or clarity around certain things. And it can be things that you don't even think are significant because they're so easy for you, And
I think that just clicked for so many listeners. Like, I think that was so profound, and not how do I think about what this means for me? What can I do? How is this an extension of me? What do I know that I can teach people? But like, just asking the question to those who you are serving of what can I do for you is the answer. And I think that that's so huge. And so many people are probably thinking about that question the wrong way.
100%. And even if I look at sort of my mom, everyone would come to her and just talk about their problems because she was such a good listener, for example. My dad, really good at spreadsheets, really good at finances. People come to me to kind of brainstorm and creative ideation. And it's always been that way. Even when I was really funny, because when I was a kid, my brother would lock me in my room and say, you're not coming out until you give me $5 million ideas. Because to be quite honest, he was the entrepreneur and the one that made money. And I was just a hopeless artist and creative, but he knew that I was really good at coming up with ideas. Yeah. He was the business person and I was just like the hopeless artist. And I think you were going to ask me actually how I got into entrepreneurship. And the really funny thing is it was completely by accident, because I always thought I was an artist. My brother was the one who was the entrepreneur. I mean, he was such an entrepreneur. He would do things like we'd have neighborhood block garage sales and he would go wake up early, buy all the best stuff, set up a table and mark it all up. And I didn't care any of that traditional business stuff. So I never thought I was an entrepreneur, right? And so I actually ended up at the Hollywood Bowl going to see Life of Monty Python, Life of Brian, with a really OG kind of online business coach by the name of Max Simon, who's now doing like cannabis media, something completely different. And when we were there, he found out that I was a photographer. I was an artist. And he asked if I could come and take pictures of his live event in exchange for going for free. And so I did. And it was like a build your online business live event. But that didn't get me started. He asked me to come back 5 times. And it took me photographing the same freaking event 5 times before I thought, could I do this too? That's how much I was not an entrepreneur.
It just was not on your radar.
And like this whole kind of online business coach guru thing was kind of weird. Like I didn't grow up even thinking that was a thing. So for me to even realize it was a thing and then think, wow, not only is it a thing, it's a thing that I could actually do, took a big leap. But the really interesting thing, which is why I love teaching and training and mentoring people so much, is that all of my skill set as a creative. I was a photographer, I was a filmmaker, a producer, director. I did all of this creative work that was making almost no money in other industries. I think I was making like $1,000 a week working really full time. But when I started to ask myself, well, what else could I do? What do I really know how to do? I remember struggling for an answer. And I was like, I may know how to make things look good and sound good, and I can tell a really good story. But who's going to pay me for that? Because as an artist, that skill set was a dime a dozen, and nobody was making money on that skill set. But in another industry, that's the basis of all business and marketing. And I had no freaking clue. So the little artist version of me had no clue of the value of my own skill set. because it was just the thing that I always did. I was the kid who was in my room reading books or crafting or doing highly unpopular things. And then those highly unpopular, dorky things turned out to be a really massively valuable skill set.
Amen.
Didn't know it, right?
So was photography the first thing that you taught on? Like what was the first product that you said, okay, I'm going to give this a go?
All right. So I actually didn't even start with a product. I started doing web design, right?
Okay.
And that was way back in like 2010-ish. Because I had been working as a filmmaker, and also we'd been doing websites and print materials even back when you would actually send things in the mail for all kinds of government and nonprofits and things like that. So I knew how to make assets, right? Creative assets. And so I started off doing that. And then gradually over time, I realized I was doing a lot more than building websites. I was helping people clarify their message and their business and create a brand and stand out and differentiate themselves. And that I really was an expert in that. And then it just evolved from there because I realized messaging and positioning and branding were kind of like the emperor's new clothes. Like, unless it was in a specific scenario, like an online course, you couldn't see it. So then I just started to find new ways to express how do you message, position, brand, differentiate yourself. And then I started thinking about, well, how do you do it through your programs? How do you do it through your courses? How do you create unique experiences? So it's really been a long evolution. And my approach to creating courses is radically different than the traditional online courses everybody else is talking about. Like I said, it's not really about the information. It's about the result or transformation, even if it's not some big life-changing, world-changing thing, even if it's baking better cookies, right? It's about that. And so the thing that a lot of people don't realize is that most people don't change their lives through information alone. Because if they did, we'd all be living in Googletopia. I mean, we'd already have our perfect lives and our perfect relationships and $1 million bank accounts, because all the information you could ever want to do those things is available free on the internet, right? Yeah. But that's not what gets people into action. People get into action when they're emotionally engaged. They get into action through life-changing experiences. So I developed a formula called the experience formula that actually pulls from the world of apps and games to get people hooked on taking action and hooked on changing their lives using, our brain chemistry, because so many of us are hooked on our phones. And I remember being so frustrated when I created my first online course, because it was great information, but people weren't completing it at the level that I wanted to, weren't getting the results at the level I wanted to. And then I saw them just, spending hours and hours and hours and hours on their phones, right? I'm like, what am I doing what I'm doing over here? And how can I take this, what the app and game makers know and apply it to online courses? So I'm creating like truly life-changing, kind of engaging, almost ethically addictive experiences. But getting people hooked on the change they want to see in their life, rather than getting hooked on just whatever, notification or ping is happening on their phone.
That's very powerful.
Yeah. I find this very fascinating, because Russell will always say this, like, people are not necessarily buying what you have to get like the information. They want the result. And so like, you're not buying the drill, you're buying the whole, right? And so I think that kind of goes to what you're talking about too, is that's different than a lot of ways that other people coach. Maybe dive into that a little bit more about how that's different and the approach that you take.
Well, the way Russell's talking about it's 100% true. And, the great marketers know that it's about the benefit and not the feature, right? Yeah. However, I think that marketing doesn't stop when someone signs up for your product, program, or course. And there are a lot of people who are great marketers who don't actually know how to deliver an outcome or transformation. They may focus on it in their marketing, but delivering that,
totally different.
Especially when you think about all the ways that people get stuck, or they resist, or they psych themselves out, or their lives are busy, or they're just, tired because they've been pivoting so much since the pandemic, right? They're running out of steam, running out of resilience, running out of hope sometimes. So in order to really deliver on your promises, and when you look at, there's so many options in the market, the people who are succeeding long-term are the ones who've gotten really good at delivering on their promises, not just marketing their promises, right?
Yeah.
So that's where it helps to understand human motivation, and helps to understand brain science. And of course, I did all the work and the hundreds of hours of obsessively researching this stuff to distill it down for people so they don't have to do it. But I identified 10 core experiences that when you embed them, And it can be more than just an online course. It can be a group coaching program. It can actually be a service delivery offer. Anytime where whoever you're working with, they have to do something. All right. If you need people to do something and not just, buy something, then applying this formula actually helps ramp people up into what I call a state of unstoppable momentum, where they've taken enough action that it becomes easier to take more action than it becomes to stop. Because, if you look at a lot of the psychological principles, people will do more of what they've done in the past. Yeah. But the way most courses even set people up, they sign up and they're bombarded with emails and stuff to do when they can't even get started. What I do is almost as soon as someone signs up, they're already taking action. Like, I think if I can get someone to be in action, not just consuming and watching, but doing something within minutes of signing up, then, I've started to ramp them up into more action. But it's what that first action is so important too. A lot of times people do a lot of boring kind of introductory, like, here's how to use the program action versus, no, I'm actually going to get you doing the program. So one of my favorite things to do is the very first training should reinforce the promise of the course and allow someone to see themselves crossing the finish line, So let me give you an example. I had a student who helped musicians get their music on television shows. And the very first thing he had people do was, do all the legal paperwork to be eligible to submit their music on these shows. And you're talking about creative musicians. And the first thing you have them do is like a bunch of paperwork, and then he was wondering why people were falling out and they were refunding. So this is kind of based on a linear approach to course creation, which is almost what most people do, which is starting with the first step. But I teach people how to use a motivational approach instead, where you don't necessarily give them the first step, because the first step from a logical standpoint is often boring or it's hard. So the first step then becomes motivational rather than linear. But it still makes sense why it's the first step. So I had them create their dream 50 list of the 50 television shows they'd love to be on, and simply being on one would be a huge success. But you've got to go further than that. If they had to go and do the research and figure out 50 TV shows, it's too much. You want to provide the list of every show that accepts music by an amateur artist. You want to then sort the list by genre. So all they have to do is say this one, this one, this one, this one.
Right.
That's what happens. Every single, show they put on their Dream 50 list, they're imagining themselves being on that show. So it's reinforcing the core promise. So you're reinforcing what I call the mission of the course and the future self-vision of what the win state is. So that's what I mean by the marketing doesn't stop when someone comes in. So you need to kind of not just reinforce the promise, but you need to help create that future self-vision and that picture of what the win state looks like. And that's something you want to do in every single session. And then even
this is incredible. I'm over here. I'm sorry. I'm getting so antsy because I've already had so many aha moments with what you've said and different ways that we could even apply this to ClickFunnels as a software, right? Because in traditional sense, people talk about onboarding. And when you think of onboarding, you're like, oh, that sounds very cut and dry and not very exciting. And we try to talk more about like activation, what we can do for our users. And even with like ambassador programs, it's activating, getting them excited, talking about the outcomes. And you have mentioned so much of that already in, these different industries. And I think that that's such a powerful tool to instead start with like the very first step is actually make it motivational. And, the idea of gamification has been around for so long, and we talk about how effective it is, but very few people are actually implementing gamification into their own systems, and how powerful it is to like do something that helps motivate people and hook them right away, so that not only are they kind of tapping out at the very beginning, they're already motivated. They've already written down things. They've already visualized what their future is going to look like. They're not going to turn back once they have that vision.
100%. And the thing about gamification that people misunderstand is they think it's just about adding points or leaderboards, but it actually goes into the whole structure of how you design something. So games know that the very best games increase the level of complexity about 4% each level. And if you look at all the research, like Flow, for example, Csikszentmihalyi's research, and you look at there's one column here for skill and there's another column for challenge. People have to have the right balance between challenge or skill to get into the flow channel and build that confidence. So what happens a lot of times is either the challenge is too high for the level of skill or it's too low for the level of skill. So people either get anxious or they get bored. And so when you understand that, of ramping people into unstoppable momentum by starting them with small, simple, accessible, doable for anyone actions, and then ramping them up slowly to the harder stuff. So that by the time they hit the harder stuff, where people tend to find those resistance spots, they've got enough momentum to carry them through, right?
Yeah. Wow.
And you've actually created an app. That's what Experience Defy is, an app to help people get on and actually do this. With different successes along the way. I know that when people come through coaching programs or they're learning a software without little wins, it's so easy to stop. And this provides a way for them to get those wins.
100%. Not to mention you just go onto Instagram or TikTok and you're getting bing, 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 the wins all the time, flooding your brain with dopamine. So you become dopamine addicts. So if your course isn't giving them dopamine, they're bouncing out really fast. So yes, I've got both the kind of the training and the methodology, which is my experience formula to create an experience product rather than an information product. And an experience product embeds these 10 core experiences while avoiding the 10 anti-experiences to get people into that unstoppable momentum to drive them from saying yes to the mission all the way through to the mission accomplished state, which, by the way, generates testimonials pretty much automatically. I've got almost 2,500 for my course just by embedding the win state in the program.
Wow.
And then we've got the software Experientify, which is a gamified learning management system. And we've got a lot of thought leaders coming into that. We have Jay Shetty now is building on it. Even Dan Balzerian is building on it because they see, they're able to kind of create that feeling of progress, that feeling of winning. Also the feeling like even if something is evergreen or automated, which is something I know people are setting up in ClickFunnels, that the program is still responding to the student. So they feel like their experience at least has perceived customization to it. And we don't want to feel like we're just experiencing the same thing in the same way that everybody else is. So having the tool be able to respond to the student and kind of customize as well is really, really powerful.
What an awesome business.
You mentioned kind of pre-interview here. We were talking too. I know you teach a lot of this stuff too, and I know you have some live stuff coming up. One thing that I heard you mention, and I love just bringing this up, is the buzzword right now of AI. How are you implementing that, and are you teaching that? Are the course creators using that? What are you using AI for right now?
100%. Well, what I teach is that you need to be able to combine the brainstorming content creation power of AI with the human power of experiential design, because the market is being flooded by all of those, create your course in 2 hours or 2 days, or happens to be promises. But all of those are going to be kind of like information bomb courses, So they're not really creating all of this other stuff. And so you've got to make your course a little bit more experiential now to stand out. If you just are trying to sell information, you might be able to sell it for small amounts of money. But even then, you're going to see high refunds. You're not going to see people progress because they're not getting the result. They're not going to want to keep, signing up for stuff with you. And with all of the acquisition methods that people have for getting new customers, they're so expensive that the only way to make that a profitable business is to have a back end. And the only way to have a profitable back end is to get people results on the front end. So you don't get people, like I said, information alone doesn't change lives, So you to be able to use my formula. You can use AI to shortcut some of the messaging, the copywriting, the content creation, but without embedding this formula into your programs, I really think they're, when the playing field has been leveled, that's how can you use it differently?
It has been. And I think people's BS meter online too, they can sense the people who are not genuine, right? Or maybe aren't the experts in their field. Like, I think what you're saying, Marisa, is 100% true, is how do you deliver on that? Because people people will wash through people pretty darn quick when they find out, hey, this expert now 6 months ago was an expert on this, but now they're an expert on this, right? Do you have anything to say to those type of people who are constantly trying to find that niche versus somebody who's really a true expert in their field?
Well, again, it's tricky because there are people who are getting started all the time.
Sure.
And, you can be the expert that has massive amounts of experience, but can't help someone else get the result. You can also, but I think the real secret is micro niching. So I think a lot of people, who started when I started a decade ago have broader niches like online courses and business, but you have to get more and more focused and specific right now. If you try to become the top online course creation expert today, forget about it. If you try to become the top life coach today, forget about it. But if you're able to figure out, both a unique methodology and potentially a very specific niche, then you're going to have a shot at this. And I think this going deep versus trying to go wide, it might take sometimes a couple iterations to find your thing. Like a lot of people get into the playing field, but they don't get onto that home base. And so in order to make that kind of choice, you might have to try a few other choices first. And so that's not necessarily the bad thing, but you've got to get to the point where you choose something. The challenge is with micro niching, a lot of people are so much more than their micro niche. There's so much more than that one thing. And so people start to chafe within it versus realizing how deep you can actually go. I remember, it's kind of a funny lesson, but I was dating someone like right after college, and then I was going to grad school in London. And I was like, I kind of want to keep things open right now. I don't want to go to grad school with like a boyfriend. And he said, well, how do you know you're not closing a really big opportunity, by breaking things off with me? And I was like, he's got a point. I was like thinking, I get to date all kinds of, hotties, right? He's just thinking, no, if you actually go deep with me, you're missing something. And as someone who just had my 10-year wedding anniversary, not to that guy, but to another guy, there is something there about the depth of going and just the beauty of being able to go deeper. And I think that we live in such a fast food culture with instant gratification that no matter what, you're going to get bored at certain points in time, And I think though, bouncing from thing to thing to thing to thing is not necessarily the solution.
Yeah.
Fast food culture. That's quotable right there. We get all these hits of dopamine, and I love that you've gamified this because people need to see that success. That's why, and a lot of the things that we've done at ClickFunnels, right, is we do your first funnel challenge. We allow people, we've done one funnel away, allow people to see these stepping stones for success. But that also, to your point, doesn't mean that they shouldn't try some other things too. When they find that, and then you dive in, that's where people have success. That's why Russell always talks about one funnel away. And maybe it's not your first funnel. And I didn't mean to, throw shade on anybody that's trying different things. I want people to be experts in what they're in and to dive deep, just like you said. But sometimes it may not be your first try. Sometimes you may have to try some different things. That's why Russell says it may not be your next funnel, but you are one funnel away.
Mm-hmm. Well, and you brought up an interesting point too, Chris, about AI and how, that's the hot thing right now. And it's online courses using AI are probably becoming a bit oversaturated in terms of just delivering information. And this whole formula is so fascinating because it's not about the information, it's how you're delivering it. And it's also providing feelings and experience and emotion and results and showing somebody what that outcome is. And again, anybody has that information, and AI delivers information too. It doesn't add you personally as your own personality delivering something. And I think there's a lot to be said about you being an individual and offering something a little bit different from what everybody else has to offer.
Yeah. Marisa, so you teach this stuff. Can you kind of tell people where they can get started if they want to learn more about you? Is there a URL? I know you have some live stuff coming up. So tell us, I know you've got liveyourmessage.com. So tell us more where they can find you and like what's next if they want to get in touch with you.
100%. Well, if you're watching this right when this comes out, I am starting a 7-day live online course creators workshop, completely free. I only do it once a year. And you can go to liveyourmessage.com/CFR. CFR stands for ClickFunnels Radio. So liveyourmessage.com/CFR. It'll get you right there. And I've got my workshops on the dopamine button, the experience formula, the accelerated course blueprint, super hot. And if you're watching this later, it's going to redirect to something awesome too. So just go there regardless.
Keep it evergreen.
Yes. Yeah. 100%.
Oh, that's smart. This is amazing. And I think this is exactly what people need, especially people who are ClickFunnels users as well, right? Is they are looking for ways to get their message out. And a lot of people don't have that physical product, but they can train other people. They can create online courses. So this is fantastic, Marisa. I'm really excited to learn more about you too and dive in deeper with this. But thanks again for coming on. Go to liveyourmessage.com/CFR and go check out the courses, see what she's up to, and honestly, just scale your business. That's what this is all about, is finding your niche, and then more than the income, making the impact. That's really what this is all about.
Yes. Thank you so much, Marisa. You are a wealth of knowledge, and I'm excited to dig into your stuff a little bit more and even use what you've given us today as resources for our community, because I know that they're going to have so much to gain from this, especially as course creators. We have so many of them, and there's a lot of value in the advice that you've given us today. So I appreciate it. I have so many takeaways already that I'm really excited.
Any parting words?
Well, two things. One is, if you're not a workshop kind of person, there's also guides, like PDFs for each of those three things I just mentioned. And I love the quote by Zig Ziglar, which is, you can have anything in life you want if you'll just help enough other people get what they want.
Amen.
And what I'm teaching you here is, how do you help people get what they want so you can get what you want? And I think sometimes people focus on what they as individuals want. And if you just flip this, honestly, it's so much easier for everyone.
Yeah, such a great point. Thank you so much again for being with us today.
You're welcome.
Talk to you soon.
We'll see ya.
Bye.